Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to CB2's January Executive Committee meeting. I'm Susan Kent, Chair of CB2. And we do have a quorum, so we will begin. The first item on the agenda is approval of the November committee minutes. Does anyone have any questions, issues with that document? If not, I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I assume there were no no's or abstentions or recusals. Next is my report. Let's start off with a few administrative things. First of all, Happy New Year, everybody, to those of you I haven't seen before. New Year means that there are new matters of administration that we have to deal with. For those of you, of course, who have it's the start of our application and reapplication season for the board. If you're not sure if you're up, please check the borough president's website. But I bring this up particularly because it's an opportunity for committee chairs to evaluate who's on their committee and to determine if you could benefit from the addition of someone with a particular skill set or background. If you feel that's the case, because we have open seats right now, we have at least 4, maybe 5. I don't know what the final count will be. It's an opportunity, I will be asked, are you looking for people with certain backgrounds? And if there's someone out there, that you think would be a particular addition, whether you know somebody with this skill set or you're just looking for somebody like that, it would be helpful to let me know so that when I'm asked that question, I can, advocate for someone that will just strengthen, will shore up that particular weakness. To remind again, with regards to our public members, reminding everybody, it's a 1-year term that expired end of last year. If you have public members, they have to reapply. It's a 1-year commitment from January through December, except for one public member. None of our public members are currently active. They should not be allowed to vote until they fill out the application. It's really pro forma. Unless somebody has an objection, I will simply reapprove public members who reapply. And again, to remind everybody, as part of the New Year's cycle is also the start of our election cycle, which I will announce, of course, on Thursday. It's an opportunity to identify people who have been less involved up to now and maybe encourage newer members in particular to get involved and run for office. A few items I'm very happy to announce. For those of you who didn't hear, end of last year, we got we resolved the Bleecker Street school situation. NYU, Morton Williams, and the city reached an agreement. So now the Morton Williams will be there through 2036. The construction authority will retain its option to construct a school sometime in the future. For those of you, I had an opportunity to take the see the new Google building. I think there's still an opportunity to take a tour. I really would love to encourage everybody to see what an amazing place it is. It would be wonderful someday to use it as a meeting place, but it's officially their ribbon cutting will be end of next month. I don't know what the future brings, but it is a great opportunity to see a real excellent piece of 21st century design. Last item, I had brought up last month that there's going to be a vote borough board on Thursday on this gaming facility zoning text amendment. It's not something we've had a chance to bring up. However, it is my position, I will be voting against it at borough board because while we have not addressed the specific zoning change, many times this board has always been consistent in its position that anytime zoning or any action removes a board from participating in the process, that it is against the interests of the community. And that is exactly what would be happening here. This zoning text change is designed to only impact 3 specific licenses that may be awarded downstate. It's clearly designed to circumvent the Euler process, and as such, it would be contrary to a long-held position of this board. I just bring it up because we have not specifically had an opportunity to discuss this. If anyone has a concern on that, this is your opportunity to tell me that. Okay. Yes.
So you're gonna vote at Borough Board on a position that has not been passed by the board?
I am not voting. I am voting on based on the position that we have repeatedly over many years always taken the position that whenever the community boards are removed from a process that they traditionally have been involved in, it is against the interests of the community and it undermines our function. We have stated that many times in many different things. In fact, the City of Yes zoning resolution does state that specifically. On that basis, I feel comfortable saying that we should not be voting. We should be voting against this. That's my logic. If somebody would like to ask questions.
Specifically carve out only the first initial 3 downstate licenses.
The state of New York requested from the Gaming Commission up to 3 licenses that would be awarded downstate. What is proposed is that there be a zoning text amendment that would allow these licenses to appear in, wait a minute, there's in certain districts that right now they would not be allowed. And that because if the zoning text, if the amendment passes, there would be no Euler process. So therefore, it would be taking the communities out of the discussion. I have the specifics on it. Let's see, it would be either in commercial district C4, C5, C6, 7, or 8, or in manufacturing districts M1, M2, or M3. It's a very specifically tailored thing. And that, of course, also raises the question, why would you do something that specific?
I think 2 of the 3 are that people have a pretty good idea of where they're gonna go. Which is the Yonkers Raceway and Resorts World.
Well, it's possible, we don't know, but the point is that it's taking the community out of the process. Yes.
Will the land use committee have a presentation on the gaming facilities?
I can.
DCB, I've just seen other boards do it, so I was just curious if we were planning on.
We were, land use was overwhelmed this month, so we didn't. I can certainly, if you watch last month's borough board, there was a presentation.
I did.
Oh, okay. So that is already available. I can certainly.
I'm just asking. I'm not.
There's nothing on there right now.
I'm not saying yes to do it. I'm just asking if that was in the works for ladies. That's all.
I'm not aware of it. So.
You don't remember the zoning of that?
No, it's true, but it's a question of in the principle that it would. Okay, yeah.
It wouldn't be coming to.
It wouldn't be coming to us, but what we're doing is it's like that's the position that I am going to take, is that nobody should be put into that position. Okay, and if there's anybody who wants to discuss this further with me, I'm happy to. If there's nothing else on that. That's basically it. I just want to remind everybody we do have 2 new business items. So if there's nothing important in your committee reports, it's okay to just say there's nothing to report, and we will just move it along. And with that, I am done. The next item is the treasurer's report. Oh, okay. Do you have something to share on his behalf?
I've circulated
Hi,
we
sorry,
have it.
Commissioner.
It's in there.
Oh.
Here, Mark, and we did circulate the treasurer's report in the email earlier today.
Right.
The only thing I want to call out for your attention is that there's a number at the bottom of the page which looks really juicy. But it is an amalgam. It looks like we have $114,000 projected to be left over at the end of the year out of our budget from the city allocation. And that includes our street fair and council member fund, which is a non-recurring fund that, thank God, is carried over year to year, but it's not part of the annual allocation to community boards. So you should back out about $75,000 from that $114,000 number to look at what our projection for the actual spending of the allocation that we got this year is. I had a little scare over the weekend that I thought it turns out I misread something, that we were in fact getting a 5% peg, and we are not. The numbers are all there. So, so that's the only coda to the treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you. And well, the next item is the district manager's report, so.
So maybe I should stand in a different place.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, so full board this week, this week, will be at PS 130. So I'm keeping my request in diversity around the district. We will be about as far away from the Whitney as one can be. This month I'll try to shoot for something a little more central. The month after that, in March, we are back at the Sheen Center, so it's coming into focus. I completely agree with the chair that I'm salivating for the opportunity to hold the meeting at the new Google headquarters. I omitted from our e-blast the deadline for comments on congestion pricing. That is available through March 3rd, and we'll make sure that's in the next e-blast. This is my call. We have a short week this week for very, very good reasons. But we will be putting the board package together. So I ask our committee chairs to get me whatever goes in that, hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow, so we can post it online in accordance with our obligations. With respect to the calendar, I circulated not just next month, but the whole year. I understand there may be some proposals for changes or amendments to that. But I would be grateful for the opportunity to post on a save the date kind of basis, at least a couple of months rolling out rather than just the next coming month. Because we do get phone calls from folks about that. And I think it's good practice. That said, I want to make sure we're giving as accurate information as possible. The chair already reported on the open appointment portal on the borough president's website. The only thing that I'll highlight there is that for those of you, I think I sent an email to everybody who's up for reappointment this year. If I didn't, please contact me tomorrow by email and I'll make sure you get it. The two things that I think can add without repeating, one is no one is term limited yet. And the other is that there is redistricting that has already taken effect this month. So the council member who appointed you may not be the council member that you report to now. So I'll just flag that for you. I flagged that for the borough president's office as well. We'll see what the feedback is on that. Question?
Deadline,
Sorry?
deadline of the applications.
The deadline on the applications is the end of February.
The 23rd, I think.
I believe it is. And they even said at 5 p.m. So they didn't say Eastern Standard Time. So I don't know if that's on the international dateline, but they went to the trouble of saying a time of day. So I guess they take it seriously. Did I see a question?
Yes, does the board have a position on congestion pricing?
I'm not aware of.
Yes, we support it.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, we did take a vote.
Can I comment?
Eugene had his hand up, so I must go in first.
Oh,
Thanks. I had a question for Mark regarding, you mentioned the term limits. When will that be part of the, I guess, annual notifications? Because as that becomes important for returning, board members.
Gotcha. So the quick summary I can give you is that for those who've been appointed for a while, if you were reappointed to a full term in 2019, what I'll call the odd years, then your term limit will be 2027. If you were reappointed appointed or reappointed to a full term starting in 2020 or the even years, you will be ineligible for reappointment in 2030. And that's to prevent the brain drain of a 2-year spate in which all of us disappear. Well, all of you disappear. So I hope that answers the question.
2030 or 20?
No,
It's 2030.
2030, okay, thank you.
Even year reappointment. So the people who have even year reappointments, you can get 5 terms, 5 2-year terms, and everybody else gets 4 2-year terms. Another question.
yes, Shirley.
Oh, yeah, I'd just like to address your question on congestion pricing. The board actually has 3 resolutions, all in favor, supporting congestion pricing. We have not gone into the many, many nuances because there are so many divergent opinions as to what should be included in congestion pricing that it was really impossible to have a resolution addressing just one position. There are several. However, what Mark has mentioned is the opportunity to weigh in on your attitudes, which will be going on till March 5th, I think it was, whatever it was. And that will be on the next amended calendar, right, Mark? So that you can link in and provide all of your opinions and suggestions.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Shirley.
So that's all I have for you on reappointment, unless there are questions. For future, there will be a happy personnel report that I'll bring before you folks, probably for the next committee meeting, not tonight. And question there, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, if it's personnel related, will the personnel committee be meeting for that report?
It depends on, is it just, were we receiving information or do we have to take action on information?
It would be an action item.
Okay, then I would call a personnel committee meeting.
Great. Okay, so obviously there's process that I will follow. In-person venues, I'm continuing to take suggestions. Somebody suggested 375 Hudson, which is a gorgeous space. They very kindly informed me that it's gorgeous because they keep it to their own employees. And then something I'm still following up for Thursday. In the past, when you were presented with a text amendment, you had 4 choices: approve, deny, approve with modifications, deny with conditions. And as I understand it, the little box you fill in doesn't preside that last one. So I'm trying to make sure that whatever we do on Thursday night conforms to that. And I'll get back to you. There's right now the district managers and our liaison are trying to sort that out. And that's my report, unless there are questions.
I don't see any questions. Thank you. Before we go to the World Trade Center thing, I just want to ask everybody about the calendar. As Mark said, you've got the whole package, but I just want to specifically, if there's any issues you have with next month, you have time to deal with the subsequent months. Is there anything on here that anyone has a problem with?
Okay. Only thing I'm gonna say is, the week, we do have the virtual option, but most public schools and all the public schools in New York City are closed the week of President's Day. So we had any critical issues for families, might not be the best time to vote on them.
You're saying, well, you mean in terms of the full board?
Full board, yeah, the full board, yes, exactly. I'm sorry, the full board, exactly, the full board is on vacation.
Okay, I don't know what we can do in terms of, I don't think it's realistic, unfortunately. to
Yeah, no, I'm just
schedule,
sharing that.
but I think, Mark, because that's a holiday week, we have to make sure that we really get a jump start on making sure we have quorum. What we can do about it. Shirley, is your hand still up or is it something new? And you're muted.
New, just that TNT isn't noted in July. And I wondered if that was just an oversight or haven't decided where you can fit us in.
July, that's terrific.
And I figure it'll change a million times before then, but I
Well,
think I should ask.
anything that you have past February, just send an email in and we can work all those things out. Right now, I just want to make sure that next month is in order. So it gives you, you also need more of a chance to look at it. Yeah,
I just wanted, to your point that you raised months ago about we have an agenda item.
Yeah.
For the calendar. I was going to start having that because there are continuously committees that have no agenda items on there and I'll just
it's just, yes.
up until a week before there's still no agenda item and that's not for the ones that get applications since they're
Correct. Yeah, no, it's a legitimate point and we were slipping. And thank you for yes, Katie.
It was almost impossible to hear Donna. I hate I put the captions on, but too late. So
Could have moved up, I'm sorry. What Donna pointed out is that, we tried to establish a policy where to be on the calendar, you had to include your agenda to the extent that it was possible. Of course, agendas are subject to change, but we've been slipping on that and we've had committees, posting with a to be announced. And we do have to redouble our efforts. It's like, it is a responsibility because people don't know otherwise what they're saving dates for. Yeah.
I really like the idea of posting, several months in advance, and I guess it would make sense not go beyond June, since that's when the open meetings law, I guess expires, and we don't know what's gonna happen with that, maybe.
That does make sense.
And then also,
Well, I don't think we're gonna necessarily post, one of the things we need to do is make sure that our people have it so that they can do their planning. And to the extent that we don't really need to post more than 3 months in advance, I think that is more than adequate. But to the extent that a committee can start planning out, projecting forward, that's another story. So, with that, let's go to our standing committees and working groups. So let's. Yes.
So I just like a clear instruction. Should I post, obviously I'm gonna post February.
Right.
Should I go through April? Is that
Yeah.
at least as a save the date kind of thing, so.
Just say that, and it
Just a blank.
it's subject to it. These are far enough out that they're subject to change but people have a sense of what's going on.
Very good, so April it is, thanks.
Okay, so standing committees, let's start with cannabis.
we're meeting tomorrow.
Oh, that's right, okay. Human services. Human Services did not actually have did not have a committee meeting. What we had was an information session. And so at this time, what I will ask Katie to do is discuss a resolution that she is presenting to us about the presentation, which involved the World Trade Center Health Project, creating a specific cohort to study people who were age 21 and younger at the time of 9/11 or, in the subsequent weeks. Katie, why don't you go ahead?
Certainly.
Correct?
Can you hear me?
We can, yes, thank you.
Okay. It's if you've looked at the resolution, it has a very short whereas and very long, therefore be it resolved. I'll just give a little background. Community boards 1 and 3 have passed similar resolutions, and they are like Community Board 2. They have geographically defined areas where people who have health problems caused by 9/11 can get services, health services. And this is an attempt to connect with people who were in utero or under 21 on 9/11, and to get them to become part of a research program to better understand the effect of the toxins on young people, and separate from adults who were exposed. As many of you know, I am a 9/11 victim. I was diagnosed 15 years after 9/11, so it's not something that is, just what happened to you on that day, and it was obvious very quickly. And this research program will help inform for children and for adults, and may even, there are some people who feel it might help get the health coverage up to 14th Street, which was the original line, and then it would have even more impact on our community. So we're trying to encourage the federal government, who's going to be in charge of this, to reach out to more people, to more young people, to use larger networks of public schools. And our community board is adding language about reaching out to the independent schools, the religious schools, and the institutions of higher education in our area, because the public schools are not as in touch with their alumni as some of these other people, some of these other institutions who are after people for their money, so they have better lists. I think that benefits, and therefore be it resolved, should be obvious to us, and I hope that we can send this resolution in support. It's very complicated. Do you want me to read everything, Susan, or is that enough of an overview?
Don't think that's necessary unless, does anybody have any questions on this?
Is it time sensitive?
It is. That's why we did it the way that's why it's here. We didn't have an opportunity because we had less than a month to take action on it. And we didn't have an opportunity to hold a proper human services. So meeting that met our legal requirements. So what we did is we simply had an informational session with questions and answers. That's why this is being brought to us. This is very similar to the resolutions passed by boards 1 and 3. But the opportunity to actually investigate people who live in CB2 is the new opportunity that so far has eluded us. So that's where we are. Yes, Shirley.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely on target, the resolution. It's just I wanted to make a few grammatical corrections. Is now the time, or could I just send them into the office?
You should just send them in if they're just those kind of technical.
Yeah,
things,
just
then
niggling little things.
No problem.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll send them.
just send those kinds of things in.
And just on a historical basis, I think for those of you who, like Shirley, will remember, a lot of initial work on this kind of outreach and gathering the community and extending the health benefits was done in our own community board by Ann Arlen when she was on the environmental. It was called the Environmental Committee. I think it's William. I think it's your committee now, but had a different name then. And also a public member, Ellen Peterson Lewis, who lives very near Patricia and me here on the the Greenwich, Washington West side. So some of the work, interestingly enough, is sort of coming back to us in a very proper way because it started with us.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. If there's no objection, I will take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that passes. And so next is land use.
Okay, I think I'll take this one, Katie.
Thank you.
So for land use, we met on January 10th. The first item on our agenda was 388 Hudson. So 388 Hudson came back to speak with us, gave a session on their findings from the their outreach to the community. As a result of that, land use voted to pass a resolution in support of getting some of our concerns on the table communicated to HPD. The resolution was passed unanimously. I don't think I need to read. It's a pretty straightforward resolution, but 388 Hudson took a good portion of the time at our physical meeting on the 10th. The second portion of this meeting was dedicated toward the City of Yes, the second of the proposals, which is the economic opportunity. We had the council member, Chris Marte, join our meeting to give information and asked the land use committee to take a look at the provisions of City of Yes and how it would affect the arts fund that was previously passed as part of the Soho No rezoning in 2021. We heard him and Connor's, his land use director Connor, on some of the reasoning why the reason we should take a look at this now, as it related to the City of Yes in terms of what City of Yes is proposing for home occupations. And as a result of that, we voted to take an amend our previous resolution on the City of Yes to add in a statement recommending that the Arts Fund conversion fee be eliminated as part of the section in the City of Yes resolution around the proposal 11, which is home occupations. The second portion of that meeting was for us to go and ask the committee if we wanted to take a position overall on the City of Yes. And so again, we took a vote to take a position, and we voted to recommend denial of the entire City of Yes zoning text amendment. So that was added into the first part of our previous resolution for the City of Yes. And again, the previous resolution I'm talking about was voted on at the December meeting of the Land Use Committee. So at that meeting is when the text for the resolution was voted on. And in January, we voted 2 amendments, one to add in the recommendation around the conversion fee, and the second to take a position on the City of Yes overall. After this meeting, there were some questions around whether some people on the committee had a conflict of interest. And so I checked with the COIB, and COIB informed me that we should consider that the members of the committee, including myself, that are owners of JLWQA units, joint live work quarter artist loft units, COIB said that they represented a financial interest, a conflict. And so for purposes of when this came up next, those members should recuse from that vote. For the vote that we took in January, on January 10th, if we go back and recuse, I think there were 3 members on the Land Use Committee that this affects. Taking those 3 members into account, the overall vote the overall outcome is the same. The vote changes from, I believe it's 7-4, with 1 public member saying yes and one public member abstaining. The new vote is 5-4 with 3.
I'm sorry. Yes, I do have to interrupt you. When you say there were 3 people, you are including your public member?
That does include the public member.
Okay,
Yes.
a public member's vote does not count towards the outcome on a resolution.
Okay. So
that's the way they don't count towards a quorum. They do not, they're allowed to vote, and it's recorded It does not count towards the final vote.
Right. So the 7-4 is not including the public members' votes. So the 7-4 vote originally is those are the full members on the land use committee. 5-4 represents the vote with 3 recusals, one of them being the public member, one of the public members.
And the direction that was received is that the vote at the committee is allowed to stand.
Yes, we can either take one of two things. We can either redo the vote, which would mean we need to reopen the meet, basically call another land use meeting. The alternative is to, as part of the minutes and as part of the minutes, indicate that had the recusals happen, that, let me just find the text. Yeah, there should be a statement on the record made at the next meeting that XYZ members of the committee were ineligible to vote. So the true outcome is ABC. And the true outcome is still the vote passes.
Okay. So thank you. Yes, questions?
I'm sorry if I missed it. Were there separate votes? Was there a vote on amending the city of yes as well as a vote to deny the entire city of yes?
Yes, it's a little complicated because there was an initial vote in December. So in December, the committee voted on the entire resolution. That resolution did not come before board in December.
Okay.
So
which is a procedural issue, because if a committee votes on something, we are responsible for then bringing it before the board. And it did not come before the board.
That's correct. So
there was nobody to send it back.
Yeah.
Correct.
And what I guess prompted the change of approach from asking for an amendment to just denying outright?
Well, the denying outright it's the introduction to the therefore be it resolved section. So it was really an oversight in that our original resolution did not take a position yes or no on the entire city of yes. We outlined, the land use committee outlined by proposal the comments on the different proposals that are part of the city of yes.
Okay, but didn't we already vote for the first leg of the city of yes in favor of it?
The carbon neutrality?
Yes.
You're talking about the carbon, that's a different, that's a different city of yes.
City, each of the 3 legs,
I
Sam.
thought you were saying like the whole city of.
Oh, no, sorry. Now I see your questions are coming from, right. So this is the second of 3 city of yes proposals.
I know. That's
Okay.
what I was confused.
So who else had their hand up?
I know that Eugene was mentioning how it doesn't change the outcome of the vote because it still was 5-4 if you move the votes around, but am I wrong to think that it's possible that without the disclosure that it did affect people voting in favor of it? I'm just presenting that on the table. I don't need any sort of response from anyone, just presenting that on the table.
It is certainly a very reasonable argument. I mean, anytime somebody participates, they can influence a discussion. And if you don't know where they're coming from, that of course weighs into it. Ultimately, we have to go with what COIB tells us. If COIB tells us that their past actions do not have to be negated, then that's what I feel I'm bound to do. If people are not, of course, that doesn't limit us from when this goes to board, people saying, something we would like to send it back and deal with it further. That is certainly within our rights. Yes.
I think we amended something that the committee wasn't entitled to amend because it had already passed the committee. That's number 1. Number 2, and I believe if you go back and look in December, the consensus of the committee was against the city of yes. And we were prepared to send this to the board. And it was only when we found out there was more time that people wanted to refine the supporting elements of the resolution, not to revisit the resolution. And as such, that was put back on the agenda to discuss that, not to re-vote on it. So that's number 1. Number 2, it's out of order even for Eugene to be delivering the report because he's supposed to recuse himself from chairing the meeting. And therefore, I even think it's, potentially out of order. The amendment was brought up by somebody not entitled to vote and was seconded by somebody not entitled. So there's a number of issues here, but I think if you go back to the first element, which was the committee voted on the City of Yes resolution. Our bylaws clearly state that any action of the committee has to go to the full board. It was never sent back. So there could have been more time to refine the resolution, but the underlying elements of the vote itself, weren't entitled to be revisited.
Actually, well, we're in a tough spot then, because if we take your view that it's the vote that was taken in December is what has to go to the board, then what was prepared in January, well, then you'd have to bring them both to the board.
So to revisit that, what the committee voted on in December is consistent with the discussions, with the exception to the amendment. So even though it was rediscussed, and does everybody agree with this? That's consistent with what occurred in December. It's not a revote; it's a position that the committee already had. And so remember, we were advised that we had extra time.
Correct.
And people were not satisfied with the manner in which the resolution communicated that the committee's position. And when we were advised that there was extra time, the leadership, decided we would take that extra time to work on the reso, and it was never sent back to the board. So it's still open and needs to be delivered to the board, but there's nothing that was discussed absent the amendment that's inconsistent with what the board had decided in December.
Right.
It's only refinement of the language to communicate that.
Yes, Katie.
I just wanted to, this is an unusual case in so many ways. One of the things, and Carter knows as well, that we were trying to do was which I've never done before on the board, is we're working with an outside consultant, and we were trying to take advantage of the extra time, but also the time to get his expertise. And I think the committee appreciated that there was a back and forth that we were having with him and still having with him today about some issues. So as the experts have looked at it more deeply, they've come up with more recommendations, which are in line with what we've our overall position. So this extra time wasn't just time; it was also time with our consultant. It's a very unusual situation because of this other amendment, and I think Susan mentioned something helpful that we could think about at the full board, clawing back the amendment in January, because that seems to be at the heart of our trouble. And we could talk about it again in February, because I know that Carter knows, Carter has said a variation on this, but it occurs to me that there's nothing in those 18 proposals that talks about the conversion fee or the artist fund. That's really not in City of Yes, so it'd be fine. And so Councilmember Marte can introduce that in the end of February or early March and still be within his own time limit, because the City Council is still working on it. He had wanted it to be part of this package, and that's the way he presented it to the committee. So I'm fine. Personally,
I don't want to conflate, though. There are two things. There is that particular amendment, but I think what Carter's also saying is that we had a procedural matter with regards to, there was a vote taken, a committee vote taken in December the way our bylaws, the way rules, Robert's rules work is that once a vote is taken, it must go to the board. If we had, proper thing would have been to say, we have more time, you make a motion at full board sends it back, then you would be where you want to be, because now what you did in January would then be voted on a second time and then go to full board. The trouble is that it was unilaterally clawed back without that vote having occurred. So now we have a resolution that came in December that should be voted on and wasn't, and then we still have this other one. Maybe the answer is to simply bring them both up, and then we will merge them in terms of language. If they are not inconsistent, we can take votes on both, and to the extent that they work together, that would solve, I think, the issue of the December resolution would be voted on. It would not disappear. And then we would vote on the January one to supersede it to the extent that it's missing something.
Yeah, I think you have to do that because they are different, because we took the time
Right.
to
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
refine and sharpen.
Yes.
I saw a draft version of the resolution a week or so before land use. Was there a real resolution that could be shared that wasn't completely blacklined or anything in December? I mean, was there like something that looked clean and ready to vote on? So people were just in general voting no on the concept of City of Yes, but I don't think there was a resolution in front of anyone. So I don't know how you would share two different ones. I just want to make sure we're dealing with it.
That's exactly right. It was voted on in the spirit of the meeting. If you go back and look at it and raise this specifically, you very clearly said, does everybody agree on all the points that have been raised at the committee? This is in December. And are there going to be any issues when this is written? Sorry, Katie, you can't. So I raised in December very explicitly to avoid problems at the end of the land use meeting. Is everybody in agreement on all the parts that we've discussed? Is everybody in agreement on all the components? And everybody voted with the understanding that the resolution would be written in such a way that they were comfortable, that is, provided it was based on all the discussions at the committee meeting and all the materials. And that's what Katie's referring to, is the outside consultant had a whole lot of verbiage in documents that everybody hadn't quite figured out how to bring into a 2 to 3 page resolution in such a way that a couple of sentences would capture, detailed sentiments. And the idea was that people stopped working on that, my understanding, and Katie, you could speak to this more, had stopped working on the December resolution in order to take the extra time to go through those materials to synthesize the information to communicate it better to the board members in the resolution. And once that vote was taken, it's, those are the positions. And I think that also, if you go back and revisit that the sentiment of the committee was against the City of Yes rezoning with, various thoughts on all the different parts of it. But I think that was pretty clear and in December. But the key element, which is what Janine raised, is that the work stopped before that was completed. And then the time was taken, and the whole point of that was to refine it further, not to go back to the committee and re-vote on it and hash it out. It was simply to get the language together. And we know, this is however many
There's no
thousands.
way to share two versions.
No, right. And there are thousands of pages in this. And so it's not easy to comment on all the city's thoughts, but conveying the sentiment was what was left to those who were writing the resolution.
Yes, Katie.
I just wanted to say, that one of the pieces that we were asking for from the consultant was his opinion on the SLID, Special Little Italy District, and the Soho NoHo rezoning. And we got his opinion on that after the full board. So, just, getting the timing, we were waiting for things and they came later than we needed for the full board. And they were materially helpful.
Well, can we say that we had a vote, but we didn't have a vote on an actual resolution? We only had a vote on a concept, but we didn't have a vote on a resolution. So there was nothing to bring forward to the board.
In December?
In December.
Well, then none of our committees have resolutions. Because that is the common practice of this board.
This is true. So then the alternative is we bring that forward, it gets voted on, and then we vote on the second item, on the second resolution, which there's nothing prohibiting us from doing that.
But what you're referring to as the second resolution is the resolution.
What are you suggesting?
Yeah, well, that's.
I'm just saying that
Confusing. What is appropriate to vote on in your opinion?
well, I think that the resolution that was, with the exception of the amendment, is the resolution. It's a continuation of the vote that was taken in December. There was further discussion on it to refine the language.
So what you're saying is that we can vote if you take out the amendment on the arts fund. Everything else is simply a continuation of the first one. That's what should be voted on because that is consistent. It's one continuous resolution.
Was the SLID discussed in detail in December?
There were open questions. The open question was, how did the city of Yes affect these areas? It wasn't a question of whether we take any additional positions. It was a question of what is the impact on the two areas that are unique to our board. And that was not understood because nobody was able to parse the thousands of pages and had the expertise to understand that, areas that are specifically called out in the zoning text, how that impact would occur. And the reason it was asked for is to ask George James to say, hey, you covered all these items because he's also been hired by other communities. But these two areas are specific to us. Is there any alarm bells that we should be aware of? It wasn't to necessarily do something different with that. And that was because, this is, how do we usually phrase it, where, everything's included as one thing in the city of Yes, and it removes all of the nuances, and that's what we were concerned about. How is this going to be from our specific areas?
So what we have here is really, it's one, excluding that amendment with the arts fund. Everything is really one resolution, can be voted on. Then it becomes that amendment would have to be presented as a standalone issue. And then if that is presented as a standalone issue and gets voted on independently of it, then I think we have to. Then I think we've met our responsibilities in terms of procedure. Yes, Eugene.
So yes, I think if I understand what Carter is saying, he's saying that are you saying that we revoted on the entire resolution? Because we did vote on the resolution as it was in December. There was additional information such as the SLID and the Soho NoHo district that came in after our discussion. So there was not a chance for the committee to review, let alone discuss that additional information. And then additionally, the information about the Arts Fund as well was not part of that original discussion. So I would say that the votes that were part of the January meeting were not to revote on the entire resolution, right? It was to talk about the additional information that was not part of the original discussions up to that point, because we didn't have all that information.
Well, it's a question of, are we really dealing with one resolution or two resolutions? The fact that a second resolution covers elements that were in the first doesn't mean it's not second resolution.
There isn't a first resolution that could be shared with the board.
But there was a vote on concepts, and it is true that committees take votes even when they're not voting on specific language in front of them. We do that. We do that all the time.
I don't think that additional information was inconsistent with the first resolution. That's the whole point. And that's what we had was extra time. It was not, didn't go back to the committee to revisit the whole thing.
So what we we have one resolution, the resolution that is what we'll call the January version. It's the one resolution. That's what we can vote on. The one part of that is not since everything is that's in there is consistent with what was in December, that can be voted on. It is still part of one thing. The one element that is not part of that is truly different is the arts fund thing. And that has to be broken out and looked at as an independent item.
Yeah, so I can agree with that.
Okay, so the whole city of Yes, we have no problems. We do have a single resolution that is now ready to go. That's what's going to be voted on. The question is that you have this, we do have that whole arts fund item, which is it's a standalone. It is a question of, and we've discussed that there were difficulties with that because people have learned that there were, that maybe, it should have been discussed in a different way. But we do have a vote on that. So that does have to be brought forward. It can be, once you present it, a motion can then be made to bring it back, to send it back to committee. But that should be done that way, and then it will be handled appropriately. So that's where we stand.
The question was it even raised?
What?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
The question was it even raised properly?
Was it raised properly?
Like how it was added to the agenda, or?
Well, it could be any number of sequences, but that included, because if you have a conflict by the chair of the committee, the chair should not be running the meeting, number one. Number two, it was introduced as a motion by somebody with a conflict. It was seconded by somebody with a conflict. And so you wrap up all these continuing issues. It was predominantly talked about with people with conflicts who then influence, without any disclosure, other members of the committee who don't have that information. So you raise a cascading number of issues here that is simply not an individual member who voted on and didn't recuse themselves. So I just raised that because that's something that then has to have its discussion, whatever it is, at full board. And is that in debate or is it not in debate? And if it is not in debate, then perhaps this shouldn't be moved forward. If it is in debate, then that's a question to raise at the full board.
Well, I think these are all really good points, and I find it really frustrating for all the exec members that this wasn't discussed at the, after the December meeting, not going to the board, prior to the land use meeting, at the land use meeting, you raised it, but you didn't go into this level of detail. And now you're basically thrusting this issue on a whole bunch of people and going into detail. And I think it's important, but these are the kind of things, but
it's not dissimilar how it was added to the agenda.
Now exactly.
I mean, if anything, it was added to the agenda without any notice to the committee members. I mean.
I'm not on the
that's-
committee, so I can't comment, but I can.
I just point out, this is sort of what I raised with all of this.
This is,
That there are many
but what did also happen is that these people received a ruling that how they're supposed to behave going forward, but that they were told that it doesn't negate what happened in the past.
But we don't know the facts that were presented to COIB.
We don't, we have to, then you're prepared to say that this person who did seek counsel is not giving you an accurate statement.
No,
Because we do not have the ability, we do not have the right to challenge if somebody got a ruling that's what we have to rely on.
for themselves, not for the board. We're discussing the board's action here, not any individual.
All I can do is I can go and I can, and from, present my perspective and what am I supposed to do?
So I raised this question, this same thing's gonna come up at the full board meeting,
Yeah.
and that was my point.
It will, if it
And
comes up, it
that's-
comes up, but by that time I can have an answer for you. I cannot second guess other people.
Who are you second guessing?
If a member tells me that they have received a ruling that how they're supposed to behave going forward and how they're supposed to treat their past behavior. You want me to second guess that?
I've never suggested anything of the type.
But
What
that's-
I have suggested, no, it's not at all what's happening. I'm saying that the procedures of what happened at the board were out of, not any individual member is free to correct anything. I don't have any, people take their own guidance. The point is, was it properly raised? When the vote came up, I mean, was it proposed in the proper manner?
I spoke with COIB, if I could, and COIB advised that they can provide guidance for moving forward. And they have all the information for how the meeting happened. And their guidance was, short of having to redo the vote, put in the statement that, if XYZ members needed to recuse from the vote, this is what the vote would have been, and what is the new outcome if that new outcome is different.
That's not what I was addressing. The fact that you even have given the report of the committee is out of order if you had to
Right.
recuse yourself.
This was,
Because you can't.
because that was
Chair-
my error. I should not have asked.
So, I mean, it doesn't preclude the discussion, but it raises the whole point to support what I was saying with respect to.
Okay, we are going around in circles here. So the
Yes,
question
we are.
is, what are you recommending?
The point that I raised, everybody, is this a discussion that people want to have at full board? And if not, I think that if nobody's in disagreement that this wasn't handled properly at the committee, it could be revisited at the committee. The argument that I'm making is before the vote was taken, it was improperly
Okay.
presented, which is separate from was it
Okay.
voted on?
You either have the discussion here and make a decision on removing it, or we're gonna have this whole discussion and having to enroll people in. We're gonna have, otherwise you're gonna have to enroll all of the other board members who do not understand this issue at full board. That's what's before you, and it's up to you.
Okay,
I think it would be helpful to understand what the issue is, because I think a lot of the people in the room who weren't at that meeting.
what I actually was going to say, Katie, who is a co-chair and is not conflicted, will you accept the view that this item was improperly added and therefore if we recognize that this should not have been addressed, will you accept that? As the committee chair, as the co-chair or the chair, since you are the one person who should be handling this.
I would have to do just a little research because I'm happy to have this discussion. I just don't know what the rules are about adding things to the agenda. That's all. I think that's what Carter is asking about.
I actually
in a
don't
not-
have an answer. So the question, yes, Will.
Yes, Janine pointed out something that actually applies to me. Can someone just give like a 30-second explanation of what the amendment is?
Just move closer. Don't lean back, please, William.
I'm just asking for like a 30-second explanation of what this amendment was.
This
Oh,
am-
yes. Susan, do you want to give it or do you want me to try?
Go ahead.
Christopher Marte asked us to vote or to look at his proposal to stop the conversion fee, which is a $100 a square foot fee on a JLQWA apartment, which is an artist's loft, and if it is sold or inherited, is my understanding of the two. I may be a little wrong on this, but I'm giving you high. But right, to a non-artist. So, William, are you listening?
Yes, I'm listening.
Then, okay, and that would mean that conversion fee was supposed to go. I know I'm a teacher. Sorry, William. It's supposed to go into an artist fund. Supposed to go into an artist fund, and so that would mean the end of this funding the art fund, and this is all. The artist fund was added late into the Soho NoHo rezoning to sort of, honor the position of the arts in that district. And to maybe balance some of the losses that were happening. Is that helpful, William?
I think so.
Is that accurate? Is that accurate?
It's accurate, but it doesn't tie it into why it's relevant to the city of Yes. So,
Okay, well, that's interesting, Janine, because, and I said this a little earlier, but it is convoluted, because it's hard to open up, according to, this is what the council member said, it is hard to open up zoning changes, and zoning is sort of open in the City of Yes process. There's a lot of change going on, and it's easier, more efficient to put in a zoning change now, and this conversion fee would have is a zoning change. He thought it would be good to do it now when the question is open. But Carter has long pointed out that he can open it up at any time as a city council member. And today I realize he could open it later in the process too, because we have a deadline. The board has a deadline in early February. So that's what, but the city council will not vote on this for 2 or 3 months.
So it's okay. So it ties into the Soho NoHo rezone.
So proposal 11 of the City of Yes basically expands home occupation citywide. So a home business can be used out in.
But Janine, have you announced your recusal, your fact that you have to recuse on this? You just have to announce.
I do have to recuse on this, but I
That's fine.
think it's important.
Just make sure that's on the
I have to
record.
recuse on this because I'm a property owner, but I'm also want to make sure that people understand the context.
Thank you. Yes.
So the
Yes.
context is that the City of Yes expands home occupation throughout the city. So you can do any kind of work from home. You can be an artist, you can be, a dentist, you could be whatever. I mean, the point is you could have any job in your home. And the point that was raised is that, and then the resolution basically, as had discussed at the meeting, was we oppose expanded home occupation. However, if the city council passes proposal 11, they recommend the elimination of the conversion fee because it's inconsistent with the citywide expansion of home occupation.
Okay.
That's the
That's
big
clear.
picture. And that's.
Correct, because JLWQAs are not use group 2, and the City of Yes only goes to home occupation of use group 2.
And we did not have a lengthy discussion of all of the details of what this all means during our meeting. It was thrown in so that it could be thrown in like this as a line item into this without having the proper, I felt, I voted against putting it in here, without having the proper discussion about all of this and what it all means and everything else just thrown into the city of yes. So
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I noticed, I did attend this meeting on Zoom. I'm not on the committee, but I did notice that it was added, I guess, to the agenda like 24 hours in advance. To less than 20
hours.
Yeah, so something like that. And then it was moved to go second, and it seemed to have, for something very last minute that no one had seen, it seemed to have dominated the entire meeting, whereas the very small portion of the meeting was about the actual overall city of yes, which I thought was a miss.
And I, as a committee member, I would say the same thing, and I would also say as a committee member that I missed it on the calendar because I don't read every time the calendar comes out, and there was no notice to the committee as well. So, you know, I didn't realize why we were doing that until I walked into the room. There was nothing about Chris Marte. I was not, you know, on a phone call with him. So there was no idea until I walked into the room of what we were even doing with it.
So how was this added to the agenda? Was it sort of pre-call, and when was that call, and kind of how and why and who decided?
Well, I don't know. I mean, this was not something I was consulted on, so I don't know. That does raise a question of whether or not it was properly added to the agenda. Yes, yeah, Patricia.
I had my hand up. I just want to,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
how this got added to the agenda is that, I was the first person contacted by Councilman Marte's office. Connor contacted me when they had this concept of folding in to our resolution about the city of yes, the removal of the arts fund from the Soho NoHo rezoning. I believe they approached me first because I'm the only certified artist on the land use committee, and they thought that would be helpful in terms of presenting the position. Over the course of the week, between the call I got initially with Connor and our meeting, after I had the communication with Connor, I immediately contacted our two co-chairs because I felt like they had to be involved. It certainly wasn't my call. And I spoke with them, and we had a Zoom before our meeting, which was Connor, Janine, Katie, and Eugene, where this was discussed further. None of the other committee members were involved. I made my best effort, as I believe Carter did as well, to reach out to people on our committee because nobody knew this was going on. No one was talking about it. We now are in a situation where the council member wanted to do something which to me seemed sort of unusual. I hadn't seen it before, where you fold something was already passed by city council by both our previous city council reps, Margaret Chin and Carlina Rivera, which we were now trying to override by slipping it into the City of Yes resolution, which most of the city, nevertheless, our own community board doesn't comprehend. So I felt uncomfortable with it. And if we hadn't been communicating separately, which I know is rather unusual, every other committee member would have come to the meeting last week and had no idea about any of this. So just for that alone, logically, this should be taken out and delayed to have more time to discuss it, to see if it's even something we want to reopen and take another look at, since it was passed a few years ago. So I think that's very important to, when you're saying, what was the process? How did it come about? This is how it came about.
Okay. Yes, Patricia.
So at this meeting, I see that is on the calendar, there was a discussion that says Christopher Marte. That means there is a resolution that's coming before the board this Thursday. Are we at this meeting deciding to kick it back to the committee and not present that resolution?
I think what we're discussing is whether or not, if it was not properly put on the agenda, then every action that was taken subsequent to that should not be recognized, because you can't continue on when it shouldn't have been there in the first place. Yes, Valerie.
But to be clear, it's, is your understanding that it's two separate resolutions that we're talking about here? Because it was to include this in the city of yes, right? There's not a third or second resolution.
Well, if this was,
that right?
improperly put on, then it should not, it would not be part of it. You would break it. It wouldn't be part of what, because the original vote is the December vote. This, what you have in January is simply the realization of the December vote. So that is not negatively impacted. Whatever the vote is on this in January, the question is that if it should not have been voted on because it wasn't put before the committee to begin with. That doesn't mean somebody couldn't introduce it at full board as a new matter or as an amendment independent of what the committee, but the committee should not have taken a position on it since it wasn't presented to it properly in the first place.
And I just want to add a few more facts. I don't know when Chris called Susan. He also called me. I think he called a whole bunch of people, Chris Marte. But I sent an email.
I told everyone I can give you the exact date he called and emailed me.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. I just want to share that I sent an email about the gist of the conversation to Katie, Eugene, Carter, and Susan on January 3rd, and then forwarded some additional comments that a public member of the public who actually lives in Tribeca, who attended the Brooklyn Town Hall on City of Yes, shared with me, and I just cut and pasted that and also shared it with the same Katie, Eugene, Susan, Carter, and I also copied Mark on that. And then in terms of your question, Valerie, about adding it to the agenda, it was supposed to be added as new business. And I have the email traffic and that was proposed to add it on the 9th, but you know, we've limited staff and whatever. So I'm not sure when it was actually.
That's a problem. See, that's the nature of new business, is that it's supposed to be a catch-all for things that you can't get itemized on an agenda. It doesn't have the same kind of notice requirements as it. But the thing is, by adding it on as an itemized thing, that's what triggers the notice.
Yeah.
And that's where your problem is.
And I think what got confusing, because the email traffic says added as new business.
Told them that is new business.
Yeah, it was just a human error. People make human errors, and we're sitting here at board discussing these things. And I would suggest that when anything new is added, I'm not saying it's not important, but you also cut me off because I was going to finish something else.
It didn't feel like human error to me.
Let's let her finish.
I would also just suggest, because I think this has happened with other committees, if there are changes, we all know that we're not like looking at the calendar that comes out every few days. It's more for the public. Committee chairs should be emailing their committee members with updates. Or, you know, and it's a simple thing.
It sounds like this cannot be treated as part of the City of Yes resolution. This can, if this is this is a standalone item.
It's not a standalone item according to the land use expert that came to them. So that's.
But the issue was, this wasn't added by anybody who came to our meeting. It was added by members themselves of our committee. All we had was a discussion that was marked on the agenda. The action was proposed by somebody with a conflict who was also chairing the meeting. And then it was seconded by somebody who also had a conflict. And the discussion itself, nobody knows, the board members were not aware of the conflicts. It wasn't disclosed, and therefore nobody could properly, this is why the reason we're told to disclose before anything is so that people can properly weigh your input, knowing your conflict. But that's why everybody's always allowed to talk at the community board. That's an important element. It's not to not have the conversation, but you have to properly weigh how to take into account that information.
But we have two things here. You can't go back and forth between, yes, we have something as a problem because of the conflict issue, versus the simple procedure issue that it doesn't, whether there was a conflict or not, if you've got something that procedurally should not have moved forward, whether or not there's a conflict is besides the point. The question is that
whether or not this should have been voted. Yes, Eugene.
So in terms of like the agenda item, it was, I think Janine is correct with the dates. January 9th was when it was amended to the agenda. In terms of the conflict, Carter is saying this as if the conflict was cut and clear, as if it was known. It was not. The whole point of the number to talk to someone at COID is for gray area items. If there is a potential for conflict, you know, the person that is potentially conflicted reaches out to get information. So as of when this came up at the meeting, I was not aware and others were not aware they were conflicted. So this was only after reaching out to COID, which is the proper procedure.
But not knowing doesn't absolve anybody from a conflict.
Susan, may I make a recommendation?
Not knowing doesn't reflect much of the discussion either. It was a discussion about benefit to properties, so that it seems to me hard to not imagine that you might question ahead of time whether there was a conflict.
Look, we can go back and forth right now. I don't have an answer on, you know, how, to the extent the conflict does or does not alter how we're supposed to treat the past behavior. But the question is one of procedure, in the sense that if this was not put on the agenda in a timely way, it should not have been part of the agenda.
Susan, can I address that issue? This is Michael
Yes.
Levine. I'm a committee member. I know nothing about the proposal of the council member until he was introduced at the meeting. And I would recommend at this point, one way out is to make a recommendation to sever that recommendation from the main resolution, adopt the main resolution, and then send the severed portion, which we know does not need to be addressed immediately, to send that back to committee. I think that would satisfy me as a committee member, not aware in advance of the council member's proposal, separated from the main resolution, put the main resolution on the floor, and send back the Christopher Marte recommendation to the committee for further consideration. I, as a committee member, would vote for that.
Okay. I mean, I agree with that. Do we have the authority as the executive committee or is that something that has to occur at the board?
I think it has to happen at the board because it's already.
I think so too. That's the trouble.
My point that I made on this, right, is that if there's not an objection from anybody here to send it back, then that can be relayed at the full board. Otherwise,
yes,
you reopen the whole discussion of this at the full board, which it was even going to be when you have, was it 46 voices having this?
I think that's what I think that is what should happen, is that this will be presented. You will then seek, before there's a discussion, you will explain the situation that we have uncertainty, that you will seek a motion and a support from the board to sever it, to send this portion back, and that it's the remainder of the City of Yes, which is you know, the January version of what was originally voted on in December, and that's what will be discussed.
I would agree.
And I will do that.
And
I will.
That's a reasonable solution.
I mean, of the executive.
Oh, well, that's what I'm going, that's the next thing. Is that acceptable to the committee? Do people have a problem with that?
Before that, my question was, is the question to take that action now here? To send it back from committee from the executive?
We don't have the authority to send something back to you. What we're gonna do is make a recommendation that the board is going to be informed that there is concern about that element, because that there was questions about procedure, questions about the influence of people without. It needs more time.
So is that a resolution for like a one pager of
that would be
that up so that, because like
that would be something. I mean, I can write that up as something that this is, and what we will do is that when the chair gets up to present, we will present that as an initial matter. it will get voted on to sever, to send back that portion that is the problematic portion. And then the remainder will be presented.
So is that an executive committee report before the land use report?
I think that should be something that is a sort of a prelude to the
Okay.
land use report, because that's when it logically would occur.
I'm not sure we're gonna avoid a long discussion anyway.
Probably not, but I,
Let's see, yeah, no, but because this is an important point, that's an excellent point with what I was just thinking about. There's two different issues. One is procedural, right? And the vote itself, the other is the substance.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be tied together, which is what I had said, is this something that we want to have if everybody's in agreement that this should be properly presented? We didn't even get anything in writing. All we got was a verbal statement. And I think if the city had come to us or anybody else with such a short statement, we would be apoplectic because there's no information. And just to Michael's point, he had nothing to review. This was just very, short information. It doesn't mean that this might not get there. It's just a question of what is it and how does it all fit together? And I think, as I pointed out, I think there's even dispute as to what it even is that we're asking.
but if we sever this, it will, and it goes back to committee, everybody will be informed about who should be voting on it, who cannot vote on it, everybody who participates, there will be sort of transparency, which is what our goal is. And then it can be dealt with and it can be brought back the following month, for better or worse. Yeah.
I would suggest the lack of, all these words are too vague and to make the board go more conveniently. I'm concerned about conflicts, and we got clear resolution from COIB, and you can read that language. So it's not, I don't want people to think that Carter didn't believe, doesn't trust that Eugene reached out properly.
No, that's not what I said. He reached out on his individual behalf.
See, that's
His
the
own
other thing.
situation.
It's not my right on behalf of all boards.
Not my right. That is a private matter. I cannot quote his language. I can seek guidance on what I should be doing as chair, and that's what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Yeah, but I think we should be just explicit and then the fact that it was supposed to be added as new business on the 9th and it was added as an agenda item, just state the fact, so we don't get into this brouhaha over it wasn't proper, was proper, or whatever the case may be. Stick to the facts, because otherwise people are going to get confused and we're going to spend too much time on the confusion and not on the issues.
What was on the agenda? Let's just talk about what was on the agenda. All it says is that it's a discussion. That's all that's listed on the agenda. There's no action. It's a discussion.
It was supposed to be listed under new
This
business.
discussion with council member, the city of Yes for economic opportunity, so rezoning Prince Fund. Is not an action. It's just simply a discussion.
Okay, Ivy has her hand up. Let me recognize her. She has not said anything up to now.
Let me see here. Mute.
Yes.
Hi, you can hear me, sorry. It's, I guess when we go to the larger meeting, it'll be just really helpful to just be in a tone where it's more supportive, because right now, like, not knowing the density of, I'm obviously not involved in these committees, but like saying things like words like sever, and it suddenly sounds like there was malice in terms of like the path, and maybe, even worse, like sever, instead of saying things like, we're separating one item to another to make an alignment to the procedure. So that people don't feel, I feel like there's a tone here that makes it sound like people were acting over malice.
I have to stop you because sever is a technical term.
Okay.
It's not, it carries no connotations. It is a technical term where you split off a portion. That's why that word is being used.
Yeah. I'm just saying that
It is a procedural and a legal term
not a
It's like severing an action when there are multiple parties. It carries nothing else but that, so.
Well, from my end, it sounded as somebody that doesn't have your experience, that somebody's doing something terrible. So if you can say words that are a little bit more, however you need to do it, but I'm just giving you feedback that this like suddenly sounds like super, from the comments like Card is making, like it's sounding super negative. And I think like a lot of people put a lot of time in this and they're trying to figure out how to, to commit to the community. That's all I'm giving you feedback on. That's all.
Okay, it's good to hear. No, it's good to hear because this is a small, we become sort of just a small group that it discusses this. Thank you. And I hope that whatever I produce, I will try to circulate early enough so that people can give me some feedback on whether or not it accurately reflects our goal. More work to do. Okay, that's where we are right now with that. I think the best, thank you, Mark, for reminding me that the deadline for City of Yes is January the 23rd of the month, correct?
That's what it's.
So city planning is holding it on the 23rd. So for City of Yes, that's why we need to get our stuff in right now. I'm gonna move forward. Let's talk about landmarks. I think we lost Chanel. Oh, there he is. Hey, Chanel.
Sorry, I was muted. We have nothing to report.
That's wonderful. Parks. We don't have a representative of parks here. So I'm going to assume that there's no report. Schools.
Our meeting is next on Monday, the 22nd. Our title is Ensuring Inclusive and Safe School Environments for All Students.
Okay, and you didn't meet last month, right?
We met.
Was there something from last month that you wanted to share?
Okay.
They presented December.
Oh, that's right. That's correct. Okay, thank you. Street activities.
So we had a standard January meeting, very short, only for street activities. Nothing out of the ordinary. I will say we are potentially actually going to have SAFO present to us in February, and there's been a ton of turnover, and we've been working on that, and it's starting to line up, but Mark's.
That'd be really great to promote that. I think a lot of people would benefit.
February, then we might push it to March, just depending on their availability, but there's been some tentative availability for February.
That would be great. I think a lot of people would love to hear from them, actually.
There's a lot of turnover. They seem to now have steady staff, and I think the topic's kind of going to be a general. We're going to go out before the meeting and tell them the topics that have come up again and again and again in our meetings. So for those and prepare for those. Right. So that's the idea. But I don't know for sure if it's going to be February, but we're working.
Okay, cool. Traffic. Shirley is she still with us?
No.
I'm guessing that there couldn't be that much if Shirley is not there.
SLA.
Oh, SLA. I'm sorry.
And we actually, wasn't that busy a month. We heard 3 applications in SLA 1. There were more applications in that, but we heard 3. And we heard 5 on SLA 2. And there was a denial in each of those committees. I think the one thing that the committee did not recommend denial of, but is one place that's going in the Mad Morton space on 7th Avenue South that has the orange glass, enclosed sidewalk cafe. Someone came on that, and it was the holidays. The condo board did not know about it until 2 hours before the meeting. Flyers were we posted flyers, it's on the calendar, and the applicant posted flyers, but they did not see that. Another neighbor did know about it and had met with them right before the meeting. And so the committee voted to recommend approval with stipulations, which we are still trying to work on, but the condo board is probably going to come and speak against the application. I think they met with the applicant today because we were encouraging them to meet with the applicant to see what they can work out. Matt Morton, from what I've heard, has been a horrible neighbor to them and not abided by the stipulations that were put in place for that. So I think the condo and the people that are right there have a little bit of, PTSD with the whole thing that's gone on there. This applicant is coming with earlier hours and promising to work with them, and I have not heard back from them after the discussion yet today. So I would expect at least some letters to come in on that, if not people speaking from that condo.
Okay, that's good. Anybody, I don't have, anybody else have anything in terms of a working group or anything else that they want? Who? Oh, Rick, hi, Rich, Parks. Have you anything you'd like to share with us?
No resolution. It was just an update from the Hudson River Park Trust. And I think it's amazing, really impressive, all the things they've launched. It'll be in the notes. So that's it. There's nothing confrontational or debatable. Just a really sort of exciting upgrade or update from what's going on.
Yeah, they've done an amazing job. And Shirley is still not here, so I am going to assume that she had to move on. Is there any new business?
Oh, there's Shirley.
Oh, of course.
But we didn't have a meeting, so I have nothing to report.
Oh, okay, I forgot that. Thank you. If there any new business?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's right. That's right.
I took a look at the Hudson 388 Hudson Park Water Tunnel Park survey that I received a link to today, and I know it was sent out Friday evening on the CB2 calendar. I noticed that it is very biased. So this 388 Hudson Park is basically on Houston and Hudson Street. It's basically on the northernmost edge of what Hudson Square bid covers. And while if you go to Wikipedia, I mean, it's north of Houston Street. It's the village. So if you go to the survey, can you share it on the screen? I took a screenshot today of the survey. I have it. So go down. That's just there's actually this is actually go up to the top to the header. It has the Hudson Square bid, Parks, and DEP. And then these presumably are the three organizations they've engaged. MNLA is a landscape architect, WXYZ is a design firm, and Daily Tous les Jours is puts art in public spaces. So scroll down to the second page. And then they have a map of the map of Hudson Square bid zone and green spaces in it. Go down. Yeah, go down to the first question, because that kind of nails it. So basically it says, what's your relationship to Hudson Square? Check all that apply. Live, work, or visitor, other. So if you live one block north of where this park is going to be, you're going to have to check other. If you go to school, most of the schools that serve this neighborhood, you're going to have to check other. So when HPD did their analysis of the housing portion of the lot, they took the zip code of anyone who replied and mapped out where people are from. This is basically excluding, it basically is looking to only get comments or document the comments if you live in Hudson Square, because it doesn't say do you live or work in Greenwich Village, which is on the other side of the street. And then it talks about what your most favorite space is in Hudson Square. Just pull up, I have it on my own. And I can send this PDF to anyone who needs it. And then what's your favorite outdoor space? What do you want? And then it has a bunch of, what do you want? Do you want to relax? And it has, some like many surveys. It has sort of some push angles. You know, do you want to relax? Do you want ping pong? Do you want organized social events? Do you want art? And then what would you like to see more of? And then at the end, it asks for some demographic, and a mandatory response is, please provide your local address. If you work in the neighborhood, list your work address. So I don't know how this information is being collected, but I do find it's a little bit biased to have a for a public space that CB2 has been fighting for 20 years, plus to have a survey that's really focused only on the Bay Area south of that space. And, you know, CB2 does have a charter mandated role in development of this space. Now, granted, this is a design process, but we do have a charter mandated role, and we're kind of squeezed out of it entirely.
Yes. Almost the exact same survey that the Flatiron Regional bid is using. I think maybe they just are all using the same survey. Have you seen this one before? Well, I've seen this, like the exact same
It's
question.
also consistent with all the bids.
Yeah,
When
I
they
mean,
do their bids.
you know, if you look at SBS, when you look at like the report, I think there's visitor is something that's just measured as to someone who does not live or work, comes in. So it's not a tourist, it's just, I live off, you know, north of Hudson Square, so I'm considered a visitor the way they track. So I'm not.
I don't think they should though. I agree. It's very biased and it should consider the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, the visitor lumps in somebody who goes to, you know, visits the High Line with somebody who lives, you know, Patricia, who lives on Barrow Street, a couple blocks away from this bid.
But it's not, the issue is the bid's running it, and this is what bids do. And this is who bids audiences are. And the issue that we're having here is this goes back to the discussion, why is the bid running it? And that's actually the issue.
But they are
Because
running it.
No, but that is, but this is what bids do. They aren't concerned with the areas outside, and they've been given the space. I don't even know why we're not a partner in this.
That
And so.
we had been partnered with it, then
So-
we
so
could have
I-
influenced.
But with that said, has this been moving so far forward that, you know, what are we trying to accomplish? Just saying that it's a biased survey, they're the ones who are in charge of it, and that's their audience. I mean, but where does it go in? And this is the issue we've always had with bids, right? That the bids, the bid thing, and
Bid is gonna do whatever it is to further their own interests and to make themselves seem important and to justify their existence. That is by their nature. So the question is, what do you do with this, or do you then seek to develop information from other sources that, you know, to the extent that it, you know, has less impact?
Does what is the output or the outcome of this survey actually being used for? Is it the bid using it internally? Are they publishing it? Is it the official process?
You'd have to ask the bid.
Yeah, form the design.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was asked to put this up on our e-blast, both internally and by the Parks Department. And the Parks Department has a role in connection with the development of this open space. So and if this is the only way in which they're collecting information, then it's logical to assume, and certainly a question we can ask, of Steve Simon, who was the one who actually was on our doorstep asking this to be promoted, as to whether there's any other information gathering being done. My guess is no.
That's what we really need to do with that, is that if we're being asked to promote this, then we need to have promotion of something that is more inclusive. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? I mean, I agree with Janine, and it shouldn't be limited to Hudson Square itself and within that area. It needs to be limited within the area of the people that use and utilize that area. And other is not defined. It should be community board 2 and then other. And other than that, you're going to get corporate sponsors that create passive seating in that area that are shaded. That's what you're going to get. And that is the goal right now of Samara and the Hudson Square bid.
Mar, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I don't understand why we wouldn't just do our own.
Well, that's just it. Look, any group can put out whatever survey they want. What you do with that, the value of that information can be called into question. It's not a question of us. We can't influence this. The question is, how do we see more information being gathered that includes other, parts of our community that would use this space? Yes, Shirley.
Well, I just wonder, can we say something to the Parks Department and ask them to do a more extensive survey? Rich,
That
how
would
do
be
you feel?
appropriate.
You're
No.
dealing with the parks.
Yeah, they really outsourced this to the bid.
That's why. And there's the risk, is that by outsourcing it, they've infused it with a certain level of self-interest that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. As to why they've outsourced it to the bid, I don't know. This is something we've been trying to get a handle on for a long time. Why they are so adamant about turning this into a passive space. I don't know. I can call Steve.
About the money, the extra money, right? That's why the bid has it.
Yeah.
Funds.
Yes. Well, it's true that they're the facilitator of the fund that was created when Hudson
done with that,
Square
though.
bid was created.
I'll bring it up.
Yeah.
And those additional funds are being allocated here where the other water tunnels did not have them. And as a result, right? And then the bid has retained these other design firms outside of the normal in-house process, which I believe other sites were developed with, right? Those are developed internally by Park. And so
the example, this is more like Soho Square, which the bid really helped to drive and paid for the designer and got done in record time.
Well,
I would like to propose that CB2 members reach out to Parks and as soon as possible and highlight that, because Parks would never only take feedback from south of a site and not north of the site. They would never do that. And then I think maybe Susan needs to reach out to Samara at the bid and say, this is, the way you're collecting data is not reaching out to community board too. And I have to say, I am a little nervous about going around the process and creating our own survey. Not opposed to it, but I think of different city agency, but Andrew Berman got his people to write a couple thousand letters opposed to 388 Hudson, but those people didn't reply to HPD's survey. And it's gonna be like, at best, a footnote in HPD's report. So different agencies, different process, but.
Well, we're really not in a position right now. I mean, the bid did it, they have money to do it. That's why they can do it.
They have taxpayer money to this. It's not their money.
Rich, they came and explained this to us, right? I mean, they presented with this and we had an opportunity and we had reservations, but they did come, this is part of a process that's already been presented to.
Right.
And we had issues at the time, but this is not out of the norm when a bid takes, take the lead on something. And I think it's.
I'm sorry, Rich, did you have something else to add?
You're right. They discussed doing this. We didn't love the process. We had decided that we were better off trying to take part in the process than to try to ignore it or to try to undermine it. And look, I saw the survey. It's part of a new microsite they created. I think they're just trying to check off a box that says they've done things to try to reach out to the community. There are 2 more meetings. There's an in-person meeting on the 30th and a virtual meeting on the 31st. I don't like the process. I don't like the fact that they're creating something there, but they're trying to go through and just check off the boxes and say they're doing it correctly. So that if people complain, they said we had a microsite, we had an online survey. I don't think it's nefarious. I think the bid's very successful. I think the bid does a lot of really good things. They feel that, as Susan said just now, that's what bids do. They try to build things or create things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, Janine, I don't think it's nefarious. I just think we don't, it's part because we don't necessarily think an open space, a passive open space is beneficial there. Everyone else does. Since they're taking the north side for the housing, this is all they think that can be done there. But I can't get Steve to tell me if there's an ulterior motive. Like I've asked Steve directly, is this just a thing where you've got a bit of budget and if you don't use it, it's going to get lost? It's crazy. I mean, I don't want to debate the whole thing. I think it's crazy. If they're going to build a building on the north side, why aren't they using this space to, maybe, to just store, equipment or to stage equipment during the building of the north side? I think it's crazy, but I can't get him to explain an ulterior motive.
Good luck.
Should we ask to co-host the meetings on the 30th and 31st? I mean, the worst thing is,
the worst thing
We want to ask what's our role in being a partner with them.
Yeah.
Right? That's a better question to ask. How do we partner?
Yeah, I agree.
Because then we can potentially participate or even.
And if we get the brush off, we'll know.
Yeah.
And if they have a subcommittee on the bid, we not only have a representative to the bid, but we could ask that if there's a subcommittee that perhaps there's an opportunity to appoint somebody else to that, to be involved with the process, which is another way of doing that. But I look at these, this is all kind of variations, the questions of the super same limitations we had on the other water sites. With the exception that it seems they have people who might take care of some plantings, which we were told they couldn't possibly do, anywhere for whatever reason. And it's extra staffing to do stuff. And, I just wondering, what is it that we want?
I personally would like, their email to everyone says it's a vibrant and community-driven space. So we want you to participate. So if it's a vibrant and community-driven space, I want to make sure that the community board can be involved more in a more meaningful way. And two, that the community that lives just north of the open space is taken into account different from a tourist or a visitor to the neighborhood.
Do you know who the residential rep is, or reps on the board?
It's Valerie.
On the Hudson Square Bids Board?
Oh, isn't it David?
So it's a new one. But yeah.
No, that's our boards, not our boards represent. I mean, because this is where do we at, that's a great question, because the bids usually have their own residents.
There's a younger guy that just joined as a resident.
They just have one.
I'd have to look. I don't have it memorized.
Toby, why don't you say, Toby, I can't hear you. They don't know. You're not on the mic.
Welcome to hybrid
Meetings.
I think that whatever else you do, there's one thing that I don't think you really have a choice. The charter mandates that the community board make recommendations to the city with regard to new public space, redesign of public space, use of public space. This is obviously a new public space. You have to make a recommendation. The board cannot make recommendations without holding public meetings. You have to hold. So I think that's what you have to do. I also think it would be good to at least try to reach out to the bid and say, listen, we really think that we'd like to work together with you on this, but you can't leave our whole community out. If someone lives across the street, they shouldn't be excluded. And I think maybe try to win them over to, can we do this or figure out someone to bring them. But, I think the only thing you might want to do is inform the Parks Department in advance of scheduling that meeting so that they don't kind of overreact and say, what the hell are you doing? You feel that this is something you have to do as part of what the community. Thank you.
Yes, Valerie.
There are two residents that are on the Hudson Square bid board. One is a tenant and one is an owner.
Okay, well, it's a question of starting to reach out to the bid, starting to reach out to Steve Simon, seeing how we can be involved, trying to get a clearer sense of how they see us in the process.
I think Rich, if you can find out the date of when they came for that, it would be really helpful. Because I think they
Yeah, I can look it up now.
this stuff, and we might want to go back and revisit it to make sure that we put ourselves into this, actively. And I think that also, to Janine's point, to Toby's point, that survey, just asking a few more questions goes a long way to good faith. And that's something we might want to share with them, whether it's officially or unofficially, that, this, because it is on their border to the north and the predominant residential population is to the north, not within Hudson Square, much to what our chagrin, but it's mostly office buildings that were built there.
Right.
That we might just want to share that with them, and I don't know who does that, but do we want it official or do we just need to tell them that?
Well, I think let's start by making friendly calls. I don't think that we should escalate this. I think the best thing is to sort of just build bridges and communicate and see what kind of response we get.
It was in a land use meeting.
And of course, just because something was presented to us doesn't mean what was presented to us is what ultimately happened. We can, they could have presented a concept to us, and then what materialized was something that people couldn't have anticipated. So I guess it's a question of doing some information gathering right now. So. I think that's enough on that. If there's nothing else on that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I appreciate your.
Bye.